The mantras. Many readers will certainly be interested in the question whether by mantra mysticism some kind of Oriental Kabbalistic science is meant. Even those readers who have already occupied themselves with yoga and who have already studied some yoga systems have no clear picture of the mantras and the tantras and of Oriental Kabbalistic science. It would, however, be too comprehensive to publish a complete treatise on the mantras, and therefore I must confine myself to enlighten the anxious reader accordingly on the mantras merely from the Hermetic point of view. All varieties of the mantras have nothing to do with the cosmic language, which the Kabbalist is introduced to in this book. The mantras are sentences which contain an idea or even a number of ideas in only one sentence, in the so-called mantra formula, and which display the power or characteristics of a worshipped deity. We may regard therefore all mantras as sentences of prayer and make practical use of them as aids for meditation. The mantras are not magic formulas and do not evoke such or similar powers. The mantras are expressions of ideas which serve the devotion of, or the connection with, the relevant power, being, authority, characteristic, etc. In the Orient, everyone using the mantras is called a mantra yogi, no matter what way of cognition he has chosen, whether he is engaged in Hatha Yoga, Raja Yoga or some other yoga system. The mantra yoga is the application of devotion formulas for deities and their aspects. Not only Indian philosophy teaches mantras, but also every other religion. In Christian religion, for instance, the mantras are represented by the litanies. The mantras do not merely serve the devotion but also the creation of a deep connection to the relevant deity or the expression of a divine idea with a few words. What being is worshipped is up to the individual and will depend on his mental, psychic and karmic development. It is all the same whether the initiate worships Brahma, Vishnu, Buddha, Adi-Buddha, Christ, Allah, ASO, for the names play no role at all. It is, however, important that he acknowledges and devotes the basic principles of his deity in the form of their universal features irrespective of the aspect. The mantras are thus adjusted to the religious attitude of the individual. From the Hermetic point of view, it is not recommended to use mantras of religions that are unknown to the Hermetic. If someone were to use the mantras of a deity that is alien or unappealing to him, such an application would be useless. It is usually always the unattainable, the inconceivable, the unapproachable, the unknown that will attract European, and thus he throws himself on the mantra yoga and worships, by repeating a mantra, a deity who does not appeal to him at all. He is usually induced to this practice by the assertions contained in quite a number of books writing on mantras and saying that the relevant deity will shower the person adoring him with gifts, providing he uses this or that mantra. If a religious Christian somehow decides that the mantras of the Indian kind could be of use to him, but lacks the proper religious attitude to the divine characteristic expressed by the relevant mantra, he will maneuver himself into an inconsistency and be unable to penetrate into the power sphere of the relevant deity, and he will only little or no success at all. If, however, a Christian mystic has a strong religious belief, he will be able to form his own mantra which will contain the power, quality, personal features, etc., of the deity devoted by him, no matter whether he repeats this mantra in an Oriental language or in his mother tongue. In mantra mysticism it is, above all, important that the symbolic idea of God is expressed in only one sentence. Should, however, a Hermetic find an Oriental deity appealing to him so that he is not able to devote himself sufficiently to a religious system and its deity, existing on our continent, he is free to devote himself to an Oriental deity. This might also be an indication of the fact that the respective individual must have already lived, in one of his former incarnations, in the religious sphere that he now wants to choose. Since the genuine magician is clairvoyant, he can, by looking back with his spiritual eye into his former incarnations, make sure that this is true, should he be interested in doing so. There are two types of mantras, that is, firstly the dualistic and, secondly, the monistic type, depending, in each case, on the mental development and the purpose aimed at. Dualistic mantras are mantras that make the person revering a certain deity, assume an attitude by which he is the adorer and the deity or being adored by him is outside his personality. Mantras of monistic substance make it possible for the adorer to unite with the deity or idea that he adores, not externally but within himself, so that the adorer has a sense of being a part of or even the adored deity himself. Dualistic mantras, however, may have monistic traits by personifying the adored deity either within the individual or outside the same. Such mantras are called Sadhana Mantras in India. On the other hand, mantras expressing abstract ideas, that is, universal characteristics with which the adorer identifies himself, are called Nirguna mantras in India. There the beginner is first introduced to the Sadhana mantras before he comes into the position of forming abstract ideas and learns to use them in a mantramistic, that is, nirgunistic sense. Indian as well as other Oriental records point out that one should not deal with mantra yoga unless one has chosen a suitable teacher, guru, for this purpose. Only the genuine guru who is an expert in mantra mysticism is capable of teaching his pupil a mantra adequate to his state of maturity. At this occasion, the teacher will also give his pupil the proper explanation of a mantra and of its power of the word, that is, of the mantra, and explain to him the practical analogous relations of the mantra to its relevant deity. When being given the explanations of the mantra by his guru, the pupil will suddenly comprehend its meaning fully and learn to understand the deity he adores. This enlightenment or initiation into the relevant mantra is called abhisheka in mantra yoga in Indian terminology. On receiving the abhisheka from his guru, that is, on learning to understand the connections, he at once becomes capable of contacting the deity designated to him by mantra mysticism, be it the Sagunic, that is, the dualistic, or the nirgunic, that is, the monistic type of mysticism. This is not to say that the mature pupil would not be able to work with the relevant mantra of adoration without the help of a teacher familiar with mantra mysticism. It would, however, take some time until he could comprehend the universal connections and work successfully in practice. In mantra mystic books, mention is also made of the guru mantras. The word guru mantra has a double meaning. Firstly, a mantra which is explained to the mature pupil by a guru and with the help of the abhisheka. Various types of mantras might be in question, all aiming at achieving a certain goal. Secondly, the expression guru mantra may indicate a type of mantra which the guru himself once used for a certain purpose and which he has made especially effective through years of repetition. That such a mantra, when confided to the pupil, is as powerful and mighty for him as for the guru cannot be doubted. Such a mantra will, of course, only be transferred from guru to pupil orally, that is, from mouth to ear, and never confided to anyone else. To describe in detail each mantra, no matter whether Sagunic or Nirgunic, whether Indian, Buddhistic or otherwise Oriental, and its application, its purpose, etc., is not the purpose of this book, and anyone interested in this will find ample instructions in the Oriental literature on mantra yoga which has been translated into different languages. Many mantras have to be repeated after having taken up special positions, the so-called asanas, either aloud, or by whispering, or only in spirit, and have no other purpose but retaining one's spirit, by repetition, the idea expressed by the mantra and not to be diverted from it. Many books also recommend that the mantra is to be spoken aloud in case of any diverting influences, thus enabling one to concentrate better on the mantra mystic idea. Repeatedly whispered mantras have, of course, a greater effect than the ones said aloud. However, the greatest effect is achieved by the mantras that are only repeated in thoughts. To get a survey over the number of repetitions in training a mantra, a rosary, string of pearls or beads, tespik string, may be used as an aid, and each time a bead of the rosary is pushed forward between two fingers and the thumb. The going through an Indian rosary with 108 beads is called a lock. It is of kabbalistic significance that a lock should have 108 beads, and not just 100. 108 may be added up to 9, 1 plus 8 equals 9, number 9 being the number of rhythm and rhythm being uninterrupted motion. In Oriental terminology number 108 had still another meaning, it is, at any rate, analogous to Hermetic science. Anyone can refer to Oriental literature, should he be interested in this. It is a well-known fact that mantras may be brought into relation with diverse rituals and ideas, either of the Sagunic or the Nirgunic type, and therefore I need not deal with the details here. Every religious system makes use of the same methods for its rituals, prayers and mantras which serve the purpose of devoting the divine ideas, qualities, etc., or of absorbing them or applying them practically for other ends. In some books dealing with mantras, Biddu mantras or Bindu mantras also are discussed. These mantras do not express any divine idea in the intellectual language, but are letters composed in accordance with the universal laws and formed to a word expressing, cosmologically, an idea in analogy to the laws. Hence a Biddu mantra is of tantristic origin and QUABBAListic from the Hermetic point of view. The correct pronunciation of a Biddu mantra is confided to the pupil by his guru by means of an abhisheka, like, for instance, the well-known Biddu mantras of the elements, the so-called tatwas, Ham, Ram, Pam, Vam, Lam, Om, etc. If the teacher imparts the abhisheka, he will, at the same time, show his pupil how to dynamize a mantra and how to use it quadrupolarly later on. The same is the case with the Buddhist religion, where the tantras of the 5 elements are symbolized by the Biddu formulas Ka, Ha, Ra, Va, A, and explained to the mature pupil for practical use. When applying the mantras, one can resort to many other aids to make things easier, for instance, to prayers, purifications, offerings, which all serve the purpose of elevating the pupil's mind to the plane corresponding to that of the deity. From what has been said, it follows clearly that the initiate will conceive what the mantras really are, whereas the layman may see in them anything else but the real thing. Finally, I should like to direct the reader's attention to those Oriental monks who use so-called prayer mills for their meditations. These prayer mills are devices similar to gramophone records on which mantras, possibly also tantras, have been recorded, which are repeated 1,000 times, occasionally over 100,000 times, by simply turning the mill. These monks believe that their progress on the way to supreme happiness will be the greater, the oftener they rattle off the mantra or tantra by turning the mill. If, however, such a prayer mill is only an aid for the Buddhist or monk in his concentration exercises, and if the mill is used like the rosaries or locks, this might serve the purpose from the Hermetic point of view. But when a monk rattles off his mantra without thinking, his mind being engaged in something else, this fails of its object, and the genuine initiate will only see a religious fanatic, a sectarian in such a person and pity him.